I had notes and then I just completely forgot them, so we'll see how this goes. If we have not yet met yet, my name is Melissa Beauregard. I, along with Aaron Budge, and one of your technical program co-chairs for this conference. We're a little thin this morning, but for the folks here, how has the conference been so far? I can't see your faces, you can be honest. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work over 2 years, and I'm really happy that so many folks have come up to me and told me what a great time they're having. I appreciate that. In addition to that 2 years of service, another thing I've been working on over the last year, and then up until yesterday, is that I was the chair of the Younger Members Committee. So the Younger Members Committee is a brand new committee that was stood up in Vancouver last year, and we have a whole charter, but generally we were tasked with creating more engaging moments for younger members in GI. Yes, we want their membership, but we also want them to have opportunities to become involved in conferences like this, and then also in leadership. So with that task, one of the things that we came up with to create, specifically at the conference, a meaningful activity for those younger members was a younger members technical session. And then we started thinking about what are the barriers for younger members being involved. Writing a paper, if you've never written one before, the whole process can be a little bit intimidating. So for this session, our younger members didn't have to write a paper. All they had to do was send an abstract specifically to me, and then based on that abstract, I would invite them to come speak in our younger members session. And then we were also a little concerned that maybe some folks in charge of companies where these younger industry professionals would work wouldn't want to send their younger members to a conference. So to sweeten the deal a little bit, we decided to make it a competition. So we would have esteemed judges judge these presentations. Again, no paper. They're not judging the abstract either, just the presentation, and this happened yesterday. And then the younger member presenter with the highest score is then invited to come present in this morning plenary to the entire conference. So before I introduce our younger member, I would ask if there's any of our presenters from that session yesterday who are here in the audience, please stand and be recognized. It is not easy to be a young geo professional and thank you so much, doing your first presentation. I told this story in the session about how bad my first presentation at a Geo-Congress went. I will not repeat it, but it was horrific. And then also, if any of our 4 esteemed judges from yesterday are in the room, if you could please stand up and be recognized. They got voluntold into it, but they did an exceptional job. And I guess had a great night out last night. We don't have them here this morning, but we appreciate them as well. So I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to introduce our younger member who won yesterday in that competition. So his name is Derek Donnelly. He's a local guy, works for the Louisville District of the Army Corps. And Derek, if you want to come up and do your presentation, we'll be happy to have you.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Just as she said, my name is Derek Donnelly. I'm with the Army Corps of Engineers here in the Louisville District. I'm also a Louisville Cardinal. Do we have any alumni? There we go. All right, we're here. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about managing project priorities, and I have an example project with the Buckhorn Tailwater Campground Bank Restoration Project. All right, so my intention for this presentation is to kind of start this discussion on how our priorities as geotechnical professionals can be impacted by the priorities of others, other players within the design process, whether that be customers, project managers, or anybody of the like that has a hand in design, and kind of how I navigated that through this project that I did. So starting with this project, you're seeing a rainfall intensity map here. So the Buckhorn Tailwater Campground was affected by the 2022 historic Eastern Kentucky flooding. And as you can see by the star, we were right in the heart of the most intense rainfall. So we got about 12 inches of rainfall in that 4-day span, which really, caused a lot of damage in there, and we saw a lot of severe erosion. So zooming into our project site here, you're seeing an aerial image of the campground loop. We've got Buckhorn Dam to the south of this aerial image with the tailwater flowing northeast into the middle fork of the Kentucky River. And then we've got Squabble Creek flowing east around the peninsula and then around the campground loop to feed into the middle fork of the Kentucky River. So when we got all of this rainfall, Squabble Creek actually ended up flowing over that peninsula and crashing straight into the western bank of the campground. And we did see a lot of severe erosion with this, as you can see in the top left photo. We actually had camper pads that were undercut, and we used to have a lot of green space behind these camper pads before you hit Squabble Creek. And now we have lost all of that material to where these camper pads are now being affected. And in the top right photo, you can see that some of the gravel camper pads had small retaining walls that were entirely failed. So these camper pads are no longer, in use, and they've been roped off for, a little while now, since 2022. So our job was to come in and provide a stabilized bank design and also restore this campground back to working order, which involved some reconcreting of the camper pads, some paving work, and grading and some other things like that to bring everything back into working order. So to start out with these priorities, we have some constraints on this project. So the customer really wants to regain all of the camper pad space that they lost and regain as much ground as possible. And I think it's important to mention that our customer in this scenario is Buckhorn Lake staff. So they are district employees for the Louisville district. So we're all, on the same team here. But it is important that, we serve them as the customer. So they want to regain all of the ground that they lost. We do have an endangered fish in Squabble Creek, so there's another constraint. The Kentucky arrow darter makes its home in Squabble Creek, so the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will have a hand in our design, and they have to sign off on everything that we're doing to make sure we're minimizing impact into that critical habitat. The project manager, of course, wants to provide a design that is under a reasonable cost. And we are working with emergency funds for this one. So we really do not have a lot of funds to play around with, and we don't have a lot of wiggle room. So that is something that will really, come up later, and we'll talk about that. And I, of course, want to create a design that makes everyone happy, that checks all the boxes, and everyone is just a happy camper, pun intended. All right. So to get started with this one, we are thinking of a vertical solution. A vertical solution for this one will allow us to regain all of that camper pad ground that we lost and also stay out of the stream and minimize impact to the critical habitat. So we're starting out with these vertical solutions. And a sheet pile wall was really the first one that we talked about. And that was thrown out early because we are expecting shallow rock out there, and that is something that we confirmed in our geotechnical investigation. So we couldn't really drive sheet piles without doing some type of tiebacks or something like that, which we definitely did not have enough money for. So we threw that out pretty early on. So then we moved into a natural stone wall. And really, when we were looking at the slope, we had about 15 to 20 feet in height that we had to stabilize. So procuring these materials and these large stones was going to be very costly and was not going to be very feasible for this one. So we moved on from that also. And we landed on a Ready Rock gravity retaining wall. And we were getting some quotes from Ready Rock, and we did feel like we could move forward with this one. And I was really happy that I got to speak with, some design engineers that do design for retaining walls and things like that. So I was very happy with that direction, but that's where we got started. So to get into our geotechnical investigation here, we see our boring location plan. We started out with 3 borings, and we did hit that shallow rock at about 20 feet below ground surface. So we got to add another boring because we had some leftover footages in the contract. So we added boring number 4 between boring 1 and 2. And on our drilling results, we primarily had USCS sandy lean clays throughout. And I'm sure some of you in the first couple rows are starting to read. These are corrected blow counts that I have highlighted. If you can't see them, they are very low, and we have soft soils on the site. So that has just added a constraint and added, another thing that I have to think about in my design. So as I'm thinking about this, and I'm talking to Ready Rock, I'm thinking, man, we're really going to need, some sort of ground modification or foundation or something like that below this Ready Rock wall. And, I'm talking to Ready Rock, and now we're getting drilled piers is kind of what is being recommended to take it down to rock underneath the wall. And how much is this going to cost? And it became very apparent quickly that we were not going to have a project if we had to do drilled piers and take this thing down to rock. We're working with emergency funds. We really barely had enough to do the Ready Rock wall to start. So now that we have soft soils, we have to get back to the drawing board, and we have to think of something else. Of course, coming from geotech, our recommendation for a cheap solution for bank stabilization is to lay the slope back and put riprap down. So that is, we switched lanes into that. That is what we ended up rolling with, is doing a riprap slope. So we go into doing some slope stability modeling, and I started out with the steepest and kind of thinnest riprap section that we could possibly get to save as much ground as we can, because now, as you can see, we're moving from a vertical solution that really gains back a lot of campground space to a laid back slope, so we're losing some campground space. So I started out with a 1.5 to 1 slope with a 2-foot riprap section. And I did not get the factors of safety, especially in rapid drawdown, that I needed out of that to be a defendable design. We move over to doing a 4-foot riprap section. That also did not really change anything. We were seeing global, slip surfaces in here. It was really maximizing its time in that soft soil layer, which is the yellow layer in the middle there. So the whole slope was going. The riprap really was, the section of riprap was not really helping us all that much. One slope with a 2-foot riprap section. And of course, we get some pushback for that because the customer is now, going to receive a 2-to-1 slope from a vertical solution that we started out with. And so they were not very happy with that, and reasonably so. But I think this is, a really good time for me to think about what my priorities are. My top priority is to create a defendable bank stabilization design, one that is safe and will protect all of the people that are camping right on top of this slope. I know the customer, wants to provide the best campground experience to their customers, and I'm sure, a vertical solution would be awesome and it would look great and we'd have a viewing area of the water and all of that kind of stuff. But, when it came down to it, my contribution was a safe, stabilized bank design. All right, so the bottom line for this one, it really did come down to money, but I had to come to the table with something that I felt good about that would allow us to do all of the restoration that we needed to do for the site while having a stabilized bank design. So actually with this one, we not only, de-scoped from doing a vertical solution, ready rock wall, down to a rip-wrapped, laid back slope, but we also went from 4 camper pads to restore down to 3. So we really did not have a lot of money on this one, and that is something that, I learned from this one, to speak up about that early. But my lessons learned for this one is to have your top priorities established. And really for geotechnical professionals, it's going to be safety is paramount, especially in these bank stabilization designs where the public is going to be impacted by our work. But also to know where your flexibility is in your design. What can you give up and where can you find that flexibility to make the customer happy or make it a little bit easier on the other disciplines. But speaking up early in the project's lifespan is really a key thing that I definitely could have done better on this one. If we, foresaw all of these funding issues, and I obviously didn't see that there were soft soils until we, did the drilling. But right when you see these types of problems arising, it is a really, really good time to say something about it. So thank you all for listening this morning. I appreciate it.